We begin with breaking news at 11. Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson is out of a job. Aurora City Manager Jim Twombly is going to be holding a news conference any moment about his decision to fire the police chief. So as we wait for that, let's just give you a little bit of context. In a news release this morning, the city manager announced that effective immediately, Chief Wilson would no longer be the police chief, that they would be looking for additional leadership within the Aurora Police Department as part of a statement from the city manager. That statement reads, "To provide the level of public safety that our community deserves, a change in leadership must occur." That news release used that terminology, a change in leadership, over and over again. It did not specifically say she was fired, but Denver 7 has been reporting now for weeks that the plan in Aurora was to force out Vanessa Wilson as the Aurora Police Chief. Again, this is effective immediately. A division chief at APD will be taking over. The change in leadership, according to that news release and the city manager, will not impact the city's commitment to that consent decree they are already working on with the state attorney general to make improvements to the police department. Keep in mind, this comes just one day after Denver 7 reported a major backlog of cases in Aurora Police's records division, that over 2,500 cases went without a detective and without an investigation for months, including several serious cases, including murders and child sex crimes. Now, this is not specifically all about that report and our reporting that we did yesterday, because since March 23rd, our Denver 7 Investigates team has been reporting that the plan in Aurora was to force out Chief Wilson. Again, the announcement came via news release this morning. The Aurora City Manager is going to be stepping up to the microphone at any minute, and as soon as he does, we will bring you that news conference live as Aurora's Police Chief Vanessa Wilson has been fired. We have a full breakdown right now up on the denverchannel.com if you want to read what led up to this and our previous reporting. And again, as soon as the city manager steps up to the microphone, we will bring you that and the latest developments throughout the day. Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson, as you read in that headline, officially out. All right, let's get to some other news. We're learning more details about 10 suspicious fires that were set in Aurora. Denver 7's Christian Lopez has been following this story all morning and joins us live with new information from the fire department. Christian, what's the latest?
Jason, we've learned that a 17-year-old has been arrested and is facing a first-degree arson charge in connection to these fires. The largest one happened at this apartment complex right here behind me, but that was not the only fire. There were actually around 10 fires that were set overnight, and they were set in areas like bushes next to structures, as well as dumpsters and fields. And Laura Flores was sleeping when this fire started, and she told us that she saw the flames and she woke her family up.
It was horrible. Yeah, I never seen anything like that. I've never been on a fire, so I didn't know what to do.
And Dan Pollitt with Aurora Fire says that there were so many fires that they had to call both the North and the South divisions to help them put them out.
It's a concern to the folks living in the area and to the neighbors, but this is why the Aurora Fire Department trains every day and does what we do. We were able to extinguish all these fires. There were no reported injuries to any civilians as well as firefighters on any of these incidents.
And the fire at this complex displaced around 10 people from 3 different units. And the family that we spoke to is currently staying in a vacant apartment until they figure out what to do next. But Jason, they did tell me that they're just thankful to be okay. We're live in Aurora this morning. I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Christian, thank you. Definitely not the day that we want to see flames really anywhere, because we're also keeping an eye today on the weather. Let's take a live look outside right now. This is a camera along I-70 near the Kansas border. The wind is the reason why we don't want to see flames really anywhere today. Most of eastern Colorado is under red flag and high wind warnings. Meteorologist Stacey Donaldson is here. And Stacey, the winds aren't as strong today, but they're still going to be gusty.
That's right. We're talking the difference between 80 to 100 mile an hour winds and 40 to 60 mile an hour winds. So it is still very gusty here across the Front Range. That will continue for the rest of the day. We have a lot of watches and warnings in effect because of those winds. We have high wind watches in effect tomorrow for the Eastern Plains, a blowing dust advisory out toward Burlington until 7 o'clock tonight. High wind warning today and tomorrow here for eastern Colorado, and the same for a red flag warning for high fire danger for the Denver Metro and the Eastern Plains and also Alamosa. So we're keeping an eye on all of these conditions here for the next couple of days. Temperatures are in the 40s right now, but it feels like it's in the 20s and 30s thanks to that wind. We'll talk more about this situation and the full forecast coming up.
Stacey, thank you. Let's go back to that breaking news now. Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson fired this morning. Aurora City Manager Jim Twombly holding a news conference. Let's listen in live.
Key personnel. I do that through looking at facts, also discussing my evaluation of what's in the best interest of the city. Chief Wilson prioritized community involvement. This is something we all recognize as a strength of hers. However, there's more to being chief than that, and that involves management of the police department. There also needs to be effective management of department operations, engagement with officers and staff, and strategic approach to moving the department forward. There are two main themes that continue to rise up as top of concerns: overall management and overall leadership. This is a decision that came with a considerable amount of thought and ongoing discussions with officers in the police department. Division Chief Chris Jewell will temporarily oversee the operations of the Aurora Police Department. Chief Jewell has been tapped. He is currently, or was, Division Chief over operations, and the reason we tapped him is, for one, because the three district commanders who report to Chief Jewell are very strong, and we expect that there will have the least disturbance, I guess, in terms of the operations of the police department. We'll work to name an interim chief in the near future, maybe in a 2 to 3 week time frame, while Chris is the acting chief. We'll also begin immediately to work towards the recruitment of a permanent chief, which we would hope to have on board within about a 6-month time frame. With that, I do want to make a couple of statements about the department and our commitment to making the necessary changes and to implement the consent decree, not only the letter of the decree, but also the spirit. We remain committed to holding officers accountable. We remain committed to transparency, and we remain committed to our community and our police department. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you. First, I just want to say that we are city manager form of government, that this is a decision of the city manager, but I support that decision. Myself and the city council, although we are not involved in the termination process, we will vote on a new police chief. I want to say thank you to Vanessa Wilson for her years of dedicated service to this department. And I've supported her to become the police chief, and I just want to say that she, I thought, was the right person at the right time for this city, that we were going through a pretty challenging time in terms of restoring the trust in our community between the Aurora Police Department and our community, and I think she was instrumental not only in gaining that trust back, but also in setting the department on a path for.
All right, you've been listening live to Aurora City Manager Jim Twombly, Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman speaking now. This is the news breaks this morning officially from the city of Aurora that Police Chief Vanessa Wilson is no longer employed as their police chief, that they are now looking for a new leadership or a new set of leadership there in Aurora Police. We were told that effective immediately, a division chief will be taking over. The city manager saying that two overall things kept coming up in his review of Chief Wilson's job and job performance, overall management, and overall leadership. Now, we are standing by and also keeping an ear on that news conference. We have reporters there that are ready to ask the city manager questions. We have been reporting on this, that the chief was being forced out now for weeks, and we will bring you the updated information as soon as that happens. If you want to continue to watch that news conference, you can do so. That's on the denverchannel.com and also on our free Denver 7 Plus app. Let's get to some other news now. The U.S. is announcing new sanctions against Russia in retaliation to claims the country committed war crimes in Ukraine. The sanctions are against Putin's adult daughters. They also toughen penalties on Russian banks and target other government officials. The goal of those sanctions is to make it more difficult for the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, to fund the war in Ukraine.
It's a part of the continuation of our efforts to put consequences in place, hold Russian officials accountable.
We're also seeing new images coming out of Ukraine. These photos show an attack on a school that was acting as a humanitarian aid center. Ukrainian officials and the Red Cross are desperately trying to evacuate civilians from cities that are under siege. This map shows major fighting happening in the eastern part of the country. The U.S. announced it will send another $100 million in military equipment to Ukrainian forces there. Well, travelers are seeing ticket prices and canceled flights still ahead. The details on a potential merger between airlines that could add even more travel headaches. Plus, we're counting down the days to opening day, and the area around Coors Field is getting ready for the start of the season.